What's up, guys? Ivan Carranza here, and welcome to Bass Tone Tuesday. Today, we're gonna talk about why you should have a good DI box. And this comes from a user's question, Hypofert, who says on a previous video, he mentioned, there is something I can't understand. If you do a studio work, you would assume that they have already a pro quality DI or preamp available. Use it on stage, why? Nobody would notice, and there are so many options at less than half the price. He's talking about the Caveman or Noble. And use it at home. Is there so much difference with a SandSamp or other to justify the price? Now let's start with the last portion of his comment about the SandSamp. Now, SandSamps are great units. They've been working in studios and on stage for many years, and there are different versions of it. You have, the bass driver DI, you have the programmable ones, you have the BT bass. There are now Artist Signature series, Steve Harris, Geddy Lee, and they all sound really good. But the main function of those units is to make your bass sound as if it was coming out of an amplifier. And that's something that you might not always want, especially when recording. Now, let me give you a couple of examples why. When you're recording to an interface or to a console and then going to a DAW, Logic, Pro Tools, Cubase, whatever, of course you want to have a sound that matches the vibe of the song that you're recording. You want to get close to the final recording sound as much as you can prior to EQ, compression, and so on, prior to mixing. So ideally, you would track a DI track and maybe an amp track, or a clean track and something with effects that you need, for example. Why? For example, when you have an amp and you have distortion or too many effects, that can blur, let's say, the transients of your signal. So you don't really clearly see where your note starts. It becomes like really compressed, and it's harder to see, okay, here is really the attack of the note and here it ends, and so on, especially when you're running higher drive settings. So having a clean DI track where you can clearly see all the transients of your signal helps to edit and to line up things in the post-production process. That's one example. The other one, let's say you dial in a sound for a recording, and in the moment you and the rest of the band or the producer thinks that it's a great tone, and you only track that one signal. Maybe it happens that then during the mixing process, after everything has been tracked and put on the recording, the sound that you dialed in is not really working that well anymore, but because that's the only signal you recorded, there's no way to change that. So having a clean DI track gives you the options to reamp that signal, for example, sending it to an amplifier and remiking it and EQ it the way you want it to again. Or nowadays, which is a lot easier, is to put on a plugin on it. There are many great plugins nowadays that really sound great. So having the option of having the clean DI track to apply other things on top and then make it fit the recording is a really good option. And sometimes even, you don't even want to have the bass sound like it was going through an amp. Maybe you're completely fine with just using the DI track and applying EQ on it. But having a pedal like the SandSamp already, like putting the amp character to the signal, might be something that you're not looking for or the producer is looking for. So investing in a good quality DI box that's going to guarantee you that the signal going in is going to be, as good as you can, meaning having a good frequency range, not lacking bottom end, not lacking top end, not sounding harsh, having enough dynamics and so on, is a great investment in my opinion. So only relying on a SandSamp wouldn't be my first choice, even though, like I said, they are great products. I have nothing against them. They're really good stuff. So it's just that recording a clean track is also important. Then he says, if you do studio work, you would assume that they have already a pro quality DI or preamp available. Yes and no. It depends. So for example, if you go to a high quality studio, one of those big studios, or maybe it's a small studio but has good equipment, they most likely have some analog gear, some rack gear that you can use, maybe Neve channel strips, APIs, or warm audio, or you name it, maybe some also compressors, whatever, EQs, Pultec EQs, whatever you want to have. But how often do you really go to a studio to track bass? Most of the time when somebody asks me to record, or I've recorded for someone, I either do it from home or we go to the person's place and then I take my stuff there and we record because of the convenience. And if you have good gear, you can do that. So yes, if you go to a studio, they're most likely going to have some great stuff. Not always the case. Sometimes they have a regular, JDI by radial for the bass, which is good. Nothing against it. But if you have something that that you bring that could make the recording sound better, why not take it with you, for example? So I've been to several studios where I've taken my DI and I said, hey, let's try this. If it doesn't work, we'll take yours. And most of the time we end up using what I've brought. And if you don't go to a studio to record, but you have the gear at home that you can use to record and then send a really high quality signal to the person, then you're providing a good service, meaning you're providing a really professional signal and high quality playing and so on. So of course there's a difference if I plug into a Behringer $30 DI instead of a Noble or Neve or whatever, that it's gonna give me a good signal. So therefore, I think it's definitely important to have a quality DI box. You don't necessarily need to drop $600, $800, $1,000+ or euro to get a great sound. You can also get some great quality bass tones out of, for example, like I said, a JDI by Radial, an MXR DI, Tone Hammer by Aguilar, Subway DI by Mesa. There's a lot of other DIs that are good and are not that expensive, but having one that is going to provide you a good tone. Or for example, one more, the Neve that I have there. Here, I think I paid back then $230 for this. I think nowadays it costs $300, but this is an amazing DI. An amazing DI. It has a lot of headroom. It's super transparent. It's got a lot of clarity, and you can even use it to hook up your amp, your tube amp, to this, and then send the signal of the tube amp to front of house or to whatever you want to send it to. You just gotta pay attention that you have the amp then connected to a speaker, otherwise you would blow it. But this is an example of a great DI that's not that expensive. So therefore, it's good to have your own quality equipment, because that way you can either record from your home studio or you can travel to somebody else's home studio and record. I've seen so many people recording in hotel rooms. So having your own high quality stuff is going to allow you to do more things instead of always having to go to a studio to record bass. Then he moves on to asking, why should you even care about using it live? Now that is where I think lines get a bit more blurry, because there are many factors that play in. If you're playing at clubs or small to medium-sized venues, I think sound is much more easier to control, because you have some parameters that you can work with. You have a room, so there you have some frequencies and you have a natural rebound of the sound happening. Once you start moving to bigger venues, and open air venues, or big open air venues, things get more complicated for the sound. That's just the nature of it. So there, you could argue, yeah, I don't really need to take my 2,000 euro or whatever DI, because yeah, I can get away with just using, my Douglas pedal or my BT bass. And I know many people played world tours with those kinds of equipment, and that is completely fine. You know, they sound good. So no bashing from me there. They work. And that's what matters most, that they work in a pro level situation. But one thing, speaking for having a high quality piece of equipment that you know sounds good and works on the road as well, is I think twofold. One, so that you provide a person in front of house a good signal so that she or he can then shape it to match the venue's, you know, sonic characteristics. Because like they say, you know, shit in, shit out. If your signal is really crappy, the person in front doing the sound won't be able to save it to make it work in the mix. So if you provide a good quality signal, then the person there has something to work on, or has something to work with. The other being to monitor yourself. We all know that when you like your own sound, you know, you feel much more comfortable. It's a lot more fun to play. And, you know, it just makes your life easier, because there's, especially when you're using in-ear monitors, there's nothing worse than having a really bad in-ear sound that, you know, it's too harsh or too dry. You don't really feel it, that it's responsive. If you play just with your amp, you know, that's a different story, because you have all the reverb from the stage and you feel the amp and so on. But if you're relying only on in-ear monitors and your sound is not, or you're not comfortable with the sound, then I think that's gonna affect the way you play. Because, you know, like I said, I think we all know that when you have a really cool sound, it is inspiring. You're more motivated to play because you hit a note and it's like, yeah, you know, sounding really, really good. So therefore, I think it's also important to bring good stuff to use live. What that is, that depends a lot on what type of music you play, what kind of band you have, how much are you willing to travel with as well, and of course, how much budget you have at the end of the day. You don't need to drop a lot of money. This one by Neve is amazing. It's not that expensive. It's solid like a tank. Sounds great. Then, like I said earlier, also you can get, of course, a radial DI. You can get a Countryman DI. Tone Hammer by Aguilar, Mesa Boogie, what else? MXR makes great stuff. There are many good DIs out there. And once you start moving into the higher upper range, of course, you start to get diminishing returns. But if it inspires you, if you like the sound coming out of that unit and you feel more comfortable while playing with it, and you know that the person in front of house is getting a good sound, then I think it's worth investing in something like that. Because a very uncomfortable situation is when the person doing the sound has to really struggle with your tone, and, you know, he's fighting what you're sending him, because that makes the sound of the whole band suffer as well. So I really like it when sound engineers tell me, yeah, you know, you just have to push up your bass volume and that's it. I didn't have to do anything. It sounds great. You know, that's a really big compliment. They don't need to tweak it. They don't need to make it sound more, you know, morph it into something that I didn't intend it to be, because what I'm sending them works. So I think that is the ultimate goal. Of course, not always happens because of the room. Sometimes you do have to change things, but the ideal would be that the person doing the sound can focus on making the whole band sound good instead of fixing problems. You know, oh, that signal is really bass heavy, or it's too harsh, or, you know, things like that. So having, like I said, good quality signal that makes the person doing sound happy, makes you happy, makes your bandmate happy, at the end of the day makes the whole project sound better, which is why I think it's important to invest in something like that. I hope you guys liked the video. Let me know what you think in the comments, and also don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay up to date with the content that's coming to the channel. As always, thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take care.